Hi, everyone. It's Emil, and my swish machine. It's working. Got it working. Hey, welcome, Emil Amok, Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. Welcome to my Takeout, Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Oh my God, there's so much. I mean, it would be nice if things just sort of settled for a while. Like, the convention, right? We had Vance speaking, and then all these other things come up. The Democrats are on the move. The Democrats, well, first of all, it's easy to be on the move because now Biden's still, and so now they can get at Biden and say, "Hey, now what's the deal? They'll look at these polls. Who's not talking to you? Here's the real information." And now Obama and Pelosi are putting on essentially a full court press, at least compared to how they've given him some slack. And now, if you look at Axios just reporting walls close in on Biden as the one big thing. And it says just about every powerful Democrat who wasn't President Biden or Vice President Harris has expressed serious reservations about Biden's candidacy, making an end to that candidacy seem more likely by the day. Former President Obama has told allies that Biden's path to victory is small and he should consider dropping out, as reported by the Washington Post. Nancy Pelosi privately told Biden she's pessimistic. When Pelosi's pessimistic, it's all code, right? They're now talking directly. They're not talking through surrogates anymore. They're not talking to the media. Well, they're still talking to the media, but the media is reporting that the talking has begun, and Pelosi is pessimistic. Pelosi is pessimistic about Biden's chances, and she challenged him when he claimed to have seen polling that showed otherwise. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer also told Biden to consider ending his campaign. And so, Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, who does he need to hear from? Bob Menendez? I mean, really? Privately, Axios says Biden is resigned to mounting pressure, bad polls, and untenable scrutiny. There was something that said that he screwed up on a name today, General Lloyd Austin or Secretary Lloyd Austin. I just screwed up on his name. And now people are saying it makes it impossible to continue his campaign. This was reported by Axios earlier. Several top Democrats also say they now expect Biden to drop out perhaps as soon as this weekend. So, yes, but a senior Biden aide told Axios, in recent days, the president has become more committed to staying in the race. So this is where we are. Donald Trump gets shot at on Saturday. He lives, and Biden is struggling on life support. That is really, that's 2024. And if the Democrats don't move, they'll have they could possibly have an open convention situation. People will say, "Hey, we want to run. Why didn't you run before?" Well, we did, but you wouldn't let us. So we'll see Dean Phillips, who not really serious. Marianne Williamson is serious. She should be heard, but she doesn't have a serious shot at winning. I love Marianne Williamson, but I don't think she does have a serious shot. If the Democrats want to win but replace Biden, the only chance would be to keep the mechanism going with Biden Harris, easier transfer of monies, infrastructure, campaign infrastructure. But at some point, Biden would have to be in on stepping down, releasing his delegates. His delegates are his until he releases them. We don't have a convention until a Democratic convention until the 19th, and some people were balking. Remember earlier this week, the Democrats wanted to have a virtual roll call vote to ward this off, and now Biden gets COVID yesterday. We thought that would be the big news, but the big news is that he can't do anything. Remotely, he can. It's a mild case. Second time, I believe he's had it, but no one seems to be ready to dictate to Joe Biden until today. It's not quite dictating to Biden, but it's certainly Nancy Pelosi and Obama and Schumer saying clearer than they ever had that the Democrats are in real trouble. And like I've said since this whole thing started a couple weeks ago, this is actually the third week now, right? Thursday? 3 weeks of this. I said I'm starting to feel like when I was in high school volunteering for the McGovern campaign against Nixon, knowing that Nixon was a bad guy, Nixon was going to lose. Saying, "Oh yeah, he's our guy, George McGovern." Lost by a landslide. Won one state, I believe. I think it was Massachusetts, the only state he won. Because forget about the popular vote, just think about the electoral college. He just won Massachusetts, and now the polls are suggesting that. Well, the polls have been suggesting that Biden was losing in the battleground states about a week ago. And now, for sure, after the debate, after all the discussion, new polling out, and some public, some private, some commissioned by blue-ish committees. So you always have to take those with a kind of grain of salt. But they indicate that, as Axio says, it could be any day now. The walls are closing in. So that's the backdrop. And, if you're Donald Trump, you're just feeling relaxed, super relaxed. So, you think all 3 days before today has been a kind of warm-up. Right? He enters the arena like it's a WWE match. He enters like a wrestler. And then he takes his seat up in the VIP stand, sort of like the martyr turned monarch, and he lets his party perform for him. He holds court. I mean, it really is kind of like you expect all the speakers to curtsy afterwards. So last night was the main guy. Really was J.D. Vance, but the key speakers were always like the people who soften the shrill guys. So, and I'm talking about like Trump's granddaughter, Kayla. When she gets up there, she talks about her grandpa. I'm a Trump too. And I mean, it's humanizing to be called grandpa. When, remember, among testosterone-oriented guys, you don't want to be called grandpa. But now we're hearing the soft side. They're letting their soft side, their human side, down a bit. And really, that was the mark of J.D. Vance's speech, right? And so we'll get into J.D. Vance's speech. I write my column at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog, and I posted this. Unity, AAPI is all but invisible as Vance emerges after 3 days of Trump on mute. And hasn't that been great? Trump has been muted and he's just been sitting and watching and being, I don't know if he's listening. Sometimes his eyes are closed. But it's kind of refreshing not to hear Trump. And so J.D. Vance had his star turn last night. Although, like I said, some people would say, oh, it's the people who are softening and humanizing those testosterone oriented, alpha males. They're the stars because that's the thing that's missing from this Republican Party. You don't have any real strong women. None are really emerging, not at the top of the ticket. The other day, Sarah Sanders, Sarah, I mean, people talk about, oh, after that White House dinner, White House correspondent, they made fun of my looks, and she tells a story about Trump taking her aside, saying, you're beautiful, they hate you because you're doing your job. You get more stories like that. Oh, the soft side of Trump, the soft side of MAGA. Here are the MAGA women. So last night, of course, it was J.D. Vance's wife, and we'll talk to her or talk about her as I get into my column. So my column, I begin just saying, look, I confess my optimism that all of the calls for unity after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump could end the polarization that has crippled our nation's politics for years. Yes, I confess I had that feeling. And then I saw the first 3 days of the Republican National Convention. And, when Asian Americans showed up, they were essentially invisible. I mean, when one showed up, we were seen as servile, Nikki Haley kissing the ring, sycophantic, Vivek Ramaswamy eager to please so brilliantly, or were seen as ornaments for Trump. Usha Vance, the California Yalie who fell for the hillbilly elegy guy. Or, and this is important, we acted like a stand-in mouthpiece for strongman Trumpism. Who said this? Under Joe Biden, millions of illegal aliens flooded our borders. That was said by Hung Kao, the man with I guess it's a name that only Trump could love, a U.S. Senate hopeful in Virginia. Said it from the main stage. Hung Kao is typical of the Trumpiest Asian Americans in the nation, the Vietnamese community, 38% of whom say they're voting for Trump, according to that new 2024 Asian American Voter Survey. Kao is a retired Navy captain and Naval Academy grad. He served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. Kao is, or it can go as extreme alpha MAGA in a heartbeat. Here's Kao again. As an immigrant to this great country, let me be very clear to everyone who comes here. Join us for the American dream if you're willing to obey the American laws and embrace the American culture. Because I did. Ooh, there's a challenge, right? In other words, freedom be damned. You're not here for freedom of opportunity. Do it the Trump way or else. It was a glimpse of the impending American authoritarianism in yellowface. From Hung Kao. He was on earlier in the night, so in day two it was. I don't know if you saw him. But Kao's anti-immigrant diatribe was just one example. Other Republican speakers, predominantly white, repeatedly chimed in about immigrants being rapists and murderers and sex traffickers, responsible for all crimes in our society, and the cause of our fleeting sense of safety and well being. Or you can just obey the laws that you feel like obeying. So much for rule of law, right? But that's the way it is. They obey the laws they feel like obeying, like Peter Navarro, the 75-year-old Harvard graduate and former Trump advisor who didn't feel like responding to a subpoena from the January 6th Congressional Committee, and he chose instead to serve 4 months in prison. And yesterday, he was released from prison, came out on Thursday, stood before the convention, and from the platform said, if they can come for me, if they can come for Donald Trump, be careful, they will come for you. Ooh, the fear they're trying to invoke. Big, bad, deep state government that they want to be in charge of. And get this, he discounts the fact that Trump has promised, if elected, he will round up and deport all undocumented people, maybe even his enemies. Anyway, you get the gist. That's what passed for unity rhetoric at an RNC happy to unite Trump GOP, the Trump GOP members, the loyalists, but not the rest of the country, those of us who can't seem to square how the Law and Order Party wants to elect a convicted felon with 34 guilty verdicts as their president. And I thought we'd see a change, right? After that Saturday shooting, had many of us praying for Trump to live. So here's the problem with Vance. The first sign that nothing would change really came on the convention's first day, when Trump chose J.D. Vance, 39-year-old junior Republican senator from Ohio. You know this. They've been doing stories on Vance. Vance is no Gandhi. He's as polarizing as Trump. And that's just among Republicans. He's hated by moderate Republicans like Mitt Romney, loved by MAGA extremists. Vance is seen as the next generation Trump. He's a former never Trumper who in 2016 called Trump an American Hitler. He's seen the light. Then he turned it off. Vance and Trump have made up, of course, since Vance ran for Senate and Trump openly chided him for being an ass kisser. But that's just Trump's way of saying you're qualified, kid. The perfect beep on Saturday. Vance blamed the assassination attempt on Joe Biden's rhetoric that called Trump, quote, an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. Some right-wing politicos out there called that a disqualifying, bald-faced lie. But maybe that's why Vance has that beard. Vance knew what he was doing, defending Trump at all costs. And that was before he officially got the job. Yeah, they've done these stories on Vance. He's for a national abortion ban, even in the case of rape or incest. No exceptions, unless a mother's life is in danger. A slight variance from Trump, who has wavered now and thinks that states should decide. He wants to run away from abortion as much as he likes because he knows it's a losing issue. But on other issues, Vance and Trump are aligned. Vance is against Ukraine funding. So, ergo, not so hot on NATO. He's anti-immigrant to the core. Vance wants immigration and everything else to be merit-based. Admissions to the U.S. should be like admission to Yale, which Vance knows. But Vance, has adopted this conservative love of merit, discounting that even the word merit can be very subjective. Think about that. Who defines merit? What does it mean? Is it just a test score? Which test scores? Vance went from the Ohio State University to Yale Law School, but does he really think he got into the white Eastern establishment enclave that is Yale without some special push or affirmative action? Oh, you're from Kentucky. Oh, you're from Appalachia. Oh, you're poor. Oh, you're... As he established in his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, a book that was encouraged by Yale prof. Amy Chua of Tiger Bomb fame. Vance's family from Appalachia settled in Middletown, Ohio. His underprivileged working class background is the kind once used as an example in the affirmative action debates in the 80s. These were the questions. Does class trump race, or is race more important? I mean, who gets the leg up? People of color, like the Cosby kids, or the poor whites? I mean, that has always been a question.
I'm sorry if I just realized I didn't switch over my microphone. So now you should hear me a little better. I hope. But really, those were the questions. Who gets the leg up? People of color? Poor people of color? Rich people of color? That's how the Cosby kids got into the equation. Poor whites? Only poor whites? Clearly, Vance is all about class. In his speech last night, he told a story about how his grandma, had 19 loaded guns around the house, which must have been endearing to the Trump 2A, Second Amendment gun nuts, and intriguing to some elites. One time, his grandmother noticed Vance was spending too much time with a kid who was known to be a drug dealer. And Mama told him if he ever hung out with that kid again, she would run him over with her car. And Vance told the audience that's true. And the crowd showed their amusement over the potential of attempted murder. And she said, JD, no one will ever find out about it. And the crowd laughed, cheered Mama. It was part of Vance's ingratiating strategy. And maybe in that instance, it was Vance's version of Trump's. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters. Vance is working his way up to that. He's only 39. He's only been in the Senate 18 months. Between his stories, Vance took these long pauses to react to his crowd. He was present with the audience, connecting live with them. And he was in the room, right? And he was likely also connecting with the television crowd. He wasn't yelling. He was fairly soft-spoken, letting the technology reach the people at home. And you could just see how he could be effective with voters in Rust Belt states that look at him with pride. At one point, Vance talked about a young family member lament to him how they couldn't afford a home when they entered the workforce, like their baby boomer parents did. And Vance used it to explain the absurd cost of housing as, quote, the result of many failures. And here's how he described it. This was his shorthand. He said, it's the Wall Street barons crashing the economy, American builders going out of business, tradesmen scrambling for jobs, housing stopped being built, the lack of good jobs led to stagnant wages, and then this is the direct quote, and then the Democrats flooded this country with millions of illegal aliens. So citizens had to compete with people who shouldn't be here for precious housing. See, this is how Vance and this unified GOP sees it. Illegal immigrants, they're the preferred scapegoats for the lack of affordable housing for everything. And that's why it was so nice to see him introduced by his wife, Usha Chilukuri Vance, the Asian American presence near the top of the ticket. Born in California outside of San Diego. Rancho Pinisquitos, big Filipino enclave there. Usha Vance is the daughter of Indian immigrants. She went to Yale for college, then to law school, where she met Vance. Formerly a litigator at Munger, Tolles, and Olson, she also clerked for Chief Justice John G. Roberts of the Supreme Court, as well as Judge Brett Kavanaugh and Judge Emil Thapar. A one-time Democrat, Usha Vance and her husband reminded me of a story by the anti-fascist writer George Orwell, one of my favorites. He wrote 1984, Animal Farm. In his novel Burmese Days, Orwell discovered his hatred for fascism while working as a colonial cop. He saw up close the unfairness of life and how an educated, dark-skinned Burmese man could never enter the front door of an exclusive white English private club. But a Burmese woman, she could enter through the back door as a mistress or concubine. And here was Usha Vance, an accomplished Yale lawyer in her own right. She could be vice president, deferring instead to her chosen white husband, a former hillbilly, given access to an exclusive white club. I promise you this, J.D. Vance said in closing, I will be a vice president who never forgets where he came from. Sure, but for Vance, where is that? Yale? The Appalachians? Venture Capital Row in Silicon Valley? Sand Hill Road? The Senate floor? Or the state of his ambition? You know, Vance really should know better. But then he's the never-Trumper who saw the light, then turned it off. That makes him more dangerous than you can imagine. He's the walking contradiction. He's Mama's son and his unique American dream. He's Trump's second and MAGA's future, who wants to take immigration back 100 years to 1924, when the most racist, xenophobic immigration law was passed in America. There was a time when intermarriages between whites and Asians were banned in many states. He couldn't be married to Usha Vance. Not in those days. But you know, Vance is just the bottom of the ticket. The top of the ticket is still Trump, who was on mute for the first 3 days of the RNC. The former president entered the convention hall every night like a WWE wrestler. I got to admit, I watched the WWE last Friday. Man, I forget. I grew up watching wrestling, and it's so much better now than it was back when I was 5 years old. I mean, that's when you could see they would have Mexican wrestlers and Jamaican wrestlers and midget wrestlers. That was diversity on TV. You put all these people up there because their communities were watching wrestling. And it's the same thing now. I mean, there's Samoans wrestling, the blacks, of course, but mostly whites, like the kind that J.D. Vance are going to be talking to in Middletown and Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. So there was Trump entering that convention hall, going through the crowd, then he'd get up to the VIP booth to be the martyr as monarch, holding court. People coming up to him, speaking, kissing his ring and other parts. And you'd half expect him to curtsy at the end. And now here we are. Time for Trump, the final night of the convention. Will we see the change that we expected over the weekend tonight? Or will we see more of the humanizing of the demons, the granddaughters and the grandmas? Will we see them tossing tofu to the red meat crowd? You know, during the convention, Trump discovered the power of silence. No gag order needed. He's just a guy with a wounded right ear covered by a white square bandage that looks like an AirPod on steroids. His white badge of victimhood. Is that what he discovered? Or is some tapes of him speaking at near the convention center during the week? Is he changed? Changed man to discover God, discover spirituality in spite of his true character? Did he discover his spirituality? After the first 3 nights, and especially with the impending news of the Democrats in disarray, I don't expect any change at all. Don't have to. I think he's just going to have fun tonight. Hulk Hogan, Kid Rock, Dana White, UFC, WWE. It's all pretend, right? I swear, on Saturday after watching WWE, I thought maybe, he wouldn't have dropped to the ground and then put some blood on his ear. He wouldn't have faked it like the WWE. What? But like I said, with the Democrats in disarray, I don't expect any change. Not after the first 3 days of the RNC, when Asian Americans were essentially invisible. And here we are, the 4th day. Trump is ready to speak. And frankly, I doubt it will improve the silence. So that's my piece that I wrote for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Everyone is kind of waiting, nervous. Oh, what's he going to say? I think he's going to have a good time. He is under no pressure. He's up in the polls. Who knows? Maybe he'll let his hair down. Ooh, that means something when you're Trump. A different something. Maybe he'll let his hair down and say, yeah, this is me. Yeah. Maybe he'll be that free. Or maybe he'll just say, yeah, we're doing okay. I got my seconds with the hard ass rhetoric. I can be soft, but not tofu soft. Yeah. Like I said, whatever he says, I doubt it will improve the silence. Meanwhile, we'll continue to monitor the situation with Biden. He has COVID. Not as big a deal as it was during the pandemic. Still, he's 81. And don't really know if what Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi has said, if it's sinking in. Remember that dynamic, 2015, Biden wanted to run. Obama said, oh, your son Bo just died. Concentrate on your grief. Biden did. Hillary Clinton then ran and lost. So who knows how Biden's brain is working on this? Does he blame himself for bringing on Trump, who beat back Hillary Clinton with a misogynistic campaign? Does he listen to Obama, who he must see as not as sort of a fair weather ally? I'd listen to Pelosi, though. Pelosi knows politics. She knows how to count votes. I'd listen to Pelosi. So that's where we are. That's where we are. We're waiting for Trump. I have seen some reports, and I'm thinking that maybe the surprise would be, hey, I discovered God. But I think he's waiting for that. I think he's going to wait for that, until he's like until he needs. You don't need to invoke God if you're up in the polls and your opponent is about ready to keel over. But everyone's going to be watching one eye on what's going on with the Democrats and Biden, and then waiting through the Kid Rock show and the WWE guys and the UFC guys, waiting for Trump to come up and say, yeah, see that white bandage here? AirPod on steroids. Yeah. I know, I fooled you. AirPod on steroids, yeah. Earbuds. I don't know. What an interesting 2024. One thing I will give the Republicans, and I've seen a lot of these shows, a lot of these conventions. I've been watching the conventions since the 80s. Been to many live, Republican and Democrat. And I would have to say this was as enjoyable a show with decent speakers. I mean, there are people that you just want to know who are these people in the party. I don't know if Hung Cow got any traction, but just the name Hung Cow should get you some traction in the Republican Party, the land of testosterone. Your name is Hung Cow? You're an alpha male? Asian? Get out there. I mean, really, the Vietnamese are the most Trumpy Asian Americans. And who better than Hung Cow? Who better? Unless you're sickened by his adoption of Trumpy anti-immigrant rhetoric is what it is. Hey, he's espousing Trumpism and he looks like us. Well, yeah, that was the case in Southern California last year. Notice they weren't very prominent. The Southern California Asian Americans who went with Trump. Michelle Steele, right? In fact, I was surprised there just weren't that many. At least when I was looking. That's why I said Asian Americans essentially invisible. So let's wait and see what Trump's all about. A couple of the stories broke this week. I'll talk about him on another show, another time. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about, God, what a tease that Trump. The one thing you have to say about Trump, it's not that he's he is you want to say he's a master marketer, but then you look at his failures. Trump Steaks? You kidding me? Trump University? Okay, so he puts a lot of products. He fails sometimes. There's some hits. Putting Trump casinos? Look, this guy's such a good businessman. How can you have a casino and go bankrupt? Every game a casino has holds an edge over the player. you are guaranteed a profit on every hand, on every roll of the dice. It's built in. And you lose money? I mean, stands to reason. I mean, you look at see how he drove up the deficit, during his years, primarily because he cut the taxes. Oh, who did he cut the taxes on? Oh, he cut taxes on the rich people. And there's going to be, if Trump is elected, he's going to have those tariffs, and those tariffs they're supposed to hurt the country that you're putting the tariffs on. They end up hurting the American consumer, the little guy. And that's why he's got J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance is going to be his little guy. I can't have a real little guy, but I'm going to put J.D. Vance. He'll be the real little guy because he's from that Appalachia. Ooh. Talks her talk, walks her walk. Mama, get your gun. 19 of them. It's all around. So she's always like arm reach of gun. All right, let's see what Trump says. Part of me says, yeah, let him invoke Jesus. That'd be kind of interesting, huh? I mean, you'd say, wow, is this real? Is it real? Is it like wrestling? Is it real? I don't know. It can't be real. Wow. Oh, by the way, do you know J.D. Vance is converted to Catholicism? I mean, he's not an evangelical Christian. Catholic. The common ground is birth rate. Right? He's got 3 kids. Let's see if he goes 5. I mean, if he's converted to Catholicism, 3 kids isn't enough. I mean, if you're a real practicing Catholic, 3 gets you in the back pew. You want to be a front pew Catholic? 5. Say 5 or 6. I mean, the big Catholics, the Irish ones, 5. At least 5. Anything less? Come on, man. Leave your condoms at home. Throw them away. It's all rhythm. It's all about rhythm. You know, that Gaelic dance rhythm. Can't stop at 5. So, that's poor Usha. Maybe I think she left her job as a litigator because she's going to be a Indian Anglo baby machine. I mean, I hate to put it so crassly, but I mean, he is for high birth rates, no abortion, families, more the merrier. He didn't say that explicitly, but he said that in other forums. That's the thing about yesterday's speech. Yesterday's speech was really there to humanize and say, hey, here's Mama. Hey, to get the feels. JD feels. Yeah, I felt it. I felt enough. And I think that whole race versus class versus race. Haven't heard that too much, but the ideal thing about the class versus race debate is that it brought white people into the discussion. You can't have affirmative action for whites when you're just talking about race, but when you talk about class, now you talk about everybody. That's why the whites like it. Of course, blacks, Hispanics, Asians said, they're taking up our spots. They don't deserve these spots. They're white. They're privileged already. It's class. They're poor whites. Well, what's poor? Are they free lunch? Because if they're not free lunch, they're taking up my spot. I like how a lot of Indian Americans like to say, oh, We did it on our own. We pulled our own bootstraps. Some of them did. The smart ones recognized they were still victims of racism. And only because of luck were they able to break through and get that brass ring, however they defined it. Some people only think of monetary financial gain as that brass ring. Some of us don't. Some of us seek other kinds of happiness, inner happiness, not material happiness. But I know that there have been Indian Americans and Chinese Americans who say this to me. My Chinese friend said, "Oh, Chinese love money. We got the red envelope. We love money. That's our thing. That's our meritocracy. Show me the money." Right? I mean, there are some people who believe in that approach. That's your success. And then there are those who are a little more spiritual, less materialistic. You choose your path. But it's funny how J.D. Vance has just really adopted this idea of meritocracy. Like, that's the only way. That's the only way we can determine this. Meritocracy. But he got some advantage. He got some push. It may not have been on race, but it was on class. All right. Let's see what Trump says. I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, "You're going to see something the likes of which has never been seen before." Okay. Let's close with a little loving kindness. A friend of mine was anxious about everything, saying, "Oh, I don't know." I said, the way out is meditation. That's going to save us. We survived the travel ban. Remember that. If the Democrats do it to themselves and Trump gets elected, we're going to have to deal with it. I mean, some people saying, "I'm leaving." No. We'll just deal with it. Fight harder. That's why it's worth it to fight now when you can, because the incline is a little steeper after Election Day. So some loving kindness, a little metta, M-E-T-T-A. Send out the love. It comes back twofold. As I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Hey, Emil Guillermo here. Hey, check out the PETA podcast. It dropped today, wherever you podcast. This is our secret podcast. It really is secret. No one knows this podcast is here, but find it. YouTube, at Emil Amok1, Twitter, at Emil Amok, FB.com, Facebook, at Emil Guillermo or EmilGuillermo.media. That's where we are. Check out AMOK.com. Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. Till next time. Mahal Kita.